श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद् भगवद गीता साधका संजीवनी 6th chapter Dhyana Yoga verses 16 to 23. Description of rules and meditation on God with its fruit. In the next 2 verses, there is the description of the regulations that the yogi has to observe in his earthly life. Verse 16. नात्याश्नत्स्तु योगो अस्ति न चैकान्तम् अनाश्नतः न चाति स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो नैव चार्जुना. Yoga is not for him who eats too much, nor for him who does not eat at all, nor for him who sleeps too much or too little. Comment. Yoga is not possible for him who eats too much. Too much eating causes thirst for water, so he has to drink much water. Too much water makes stomach heavy and the body too. If he overeats, he becomes dull and lazy and may suffer from indigestion. Indigestion causes diseases in the body, so he can't concentrate his mind in adoration and spiritual practice, etc. So how can yoga be possible for him? Yoga is also not possible for him who eats too little. If he is underfed, he will feel hungry, will think of the food again and again, and become weak. His body will languish and life will become hard to live. He will be inclined to keep lying. It will be hard to sit for meditation. Thus, he can't concentrate his mind on God. So, how is yoga possible for him? Oversleep makes a striver idle, lazy and inert. In oversleep, the striver can't sleep soundly, and so different thoughts come to the mind. Thus, oversleep is a hindrance to the practice of meditation. This yoga is not possible for him who sleeps too little. By sleeping too little, he feels drowsy and can't practice meditation. Men of Sattvika thought attribute, disposition, while having spiritual discussions, narrating and listening to the lives of saints, devotees and incarnations of God, have so much relish and get so much engrossed in them that they don't feel drowsy at all, even by remaining awake throughout the night. This wakeful conduces them to the state which transcends the 3 modes of nature. Similarly, the devotees in adoration, loud chanting and constant remembrance of God are so much engrossed that they don't feel hungry. Verse 17. Yuktahara viharasya yukta chestasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkhaha. Yoga becomes the destroyer of pain for him who is moderate in diet and recreation, temperate in actions, and regulated in sleep and wakefulness. Comment. The food, livelihood, should be earned by honest means. It should be pure, easily digestible, light, a bit less than required, and should be eaten in accordance with the ordinance of the scriptures and Ayurveda. Recreation, such as physical exercise and walking, etc., should be resorted to moderately. The actions should be performed according to one's caste, creed, country, condition, and capacity, following the ordinance of the scriptures, happily for the welfare of others. He should be moderate in sleep. He should remain awake in the day, go to bed early at night, and rise early. Here the term avabodhasya, wakefulness, has a special meaning that the striver should be spiritually aroused, because this human life has been bestowed upon him to attain salvation. The term yukta, moderate, means that similar rules don't apply to all the persons in diet, recreations, actions, sleep, and wakefulness, but everyone should be moderate in them according to the circumstances he is in. Thus, the yoga of a yogi who is moderate in diet, recreation, etc., brings about the cessation of the travails of the world. An exceptional fact. This verse on meditation is useful for all strivers. By following it, they may attain salvation. There are 4 factors described in it: moderate in diet and recreation, moderate in actions, moderate in sleep, and moderate in wakefulness. We have 24 hours at our disposal. If 24 hours are divided into 4 parts, we get 6 hours for each of the activities. 6 hours for eating, recreation, and physical exercise, etc. 6 hours for actions and for earning livelihood, namely farming, business, and service, etc. 6 hours for sleep, 6 hours for wakefulness, namely meditation, adoration, constant remembrance, and loud chanting, etc. for God realization. They can be divided into 2 parts. 1. Income. 2. Expenditure. Actions and wakefulness are the means of income, while eating, recreation, and sleep incur expenditure. For income and expenditure, we have 2 kinds of capital: worldly riches and age. Let us think about the worldly capital, that is, worldly riches. If a person earns more, it will do. But if his expenses are more than income, it will not do. It will ruin him. If a person devotes only 4 hours to eating and recreation, etc., he may devote 8 hours to his profession, earning his livelihood. Now, let us think about age. If he gets refreshed by 4 hours sleep, he should devote 8 hours to adoration, meditation, and spiritual discipline. This spiritual discipline should be enhanced every day because we have come here for God realization, not for accumulation of mundane wealth, etc. Secondly, we should remember God while earning our livelihood and also while we go to bed. At the bedtime, the striver should think that he has to devote that time to devotion and adoration while lying in the bed. While lying, if he sleeps, it is okay, but he should not have the aim of sleeping. Again, when he wakes after sleep, he should again be engaged in adoration, meditation, devotion, and study of the scriptures, etc. While discharging his duty or performing actions, he should always remember God. Thus, each and every activity of his life will become part and parcel of adoration. Now, in the next verse, Lord Krishna explains when a striver is said to be established in yoga. Verse 18. यदा विनियतं चेत्तम् आत्मने एव अवतिष्ठते निःस्पृहः सर्वकामेभ्यो युक्ता इत्युच्यते तदा. When the perfectly controlled mind rests in the self alone, free from desires for all enjoyments, then the person is said to be established in yoga. Comment. The 5 assumed stages of the mind are Muda, stupid; Kshipta, blasphemous; Vikshipta, confused; Ekagra, concentrated; and Niruddha, tied up. In the first 2 stages, a striver is not entitled for yoga. The person with a Vikshipta, confused, mind is entitled for yoga. His mind sometimes rests, but sometimes does not rest in the self. When the mind is concentrated, that is called Savikalpa Samadhi, that is doubtful trance. But the next stage is when the mind is completely settled, and that is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, fixed trance or yoga. When the well-disciplined mind, free from the thought of the world, gets established in the self, which ever remains the same without any modification, In the self there is relish or bliss, which does not let the mind deviate from it, and thus the mind, by having this relish, gets engrossed in it. An exceptional fact. In this verse, there are two important factors. One is that the mind should rest in the self, and the other is that it should be free from desires for all objects, etc. It means that when the mind gets focused in the self, the mind does not think of any objects, persons, or circumstances, etc., but gets engrossed in the self. Similarly, if the mind rests in the self, the yogi becomes completely free from all desires, lusts, and hopes, etc. Not only this, but he has no desire even to have the bare necessities of life, and then he is a yogi in the true sense of the term. Verse 19. Yatha deepo nivatastho nengte sopama samrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogam atmanaha. As a lamp in a windless place does not flicker. This is a simile used for the disciplined mind of a yogi practicing meditation on the self. Comment. Now the question may arise, why the mind has been compared to the flame of a lamp which may flicker, not to the mountain which neither flickers nor shakes. The answer is that unlike the mountain, the mind is flickering like flame. It is very difficult to keep the flickering thing steady. So, it has been compared to a flame. Secondly, as there is light in the flame, there is light of God in the mind. Though in sound sleep and trance, there is equal forgetfulness of the world. Yet, in sound sleep, the mind merges in ignorance, and so there is no awareness of the self. But in trance, the mind remains conscious of the self. So, the illustration of the flame has been given here. Verse 20. Yatro paramate chitam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chevatmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. When the mind, disciplined by the practice of yoga, becomes indifferent, and when the yogi, beholding the self by the self, he is satisfied in the self. Comment. The determination to practice meditation on the self is dharana, while the continuous flow of the mind towards the self, disregarding other thoughts, is called dhyana, meditation. In meditation, there is a trio: the meditative, one who meditates, meditation, and the aim to be achieved, namely self. So long as there is knowledge about this trio, it is meditation. But when the mind gets so much engrossed in the aim that nothing remains except the aim, that state is called samadhi, trance. This is called sampragyata samadhi. After practicing it for a long time, it is changed into asampragyata samadhi. The distinction between the two is that in the former, consciousness of the trio of the meditative, meditation, and the object of meditation persists. But in the latter, only the object of meditation remains by becoming oblivious of the two. The former is also called ekagra, that is concentration of the mind, while the latter niruddha, that is tied up state. What happens after the yogi is satisfied in the self by the self is described in the next verse. Verse 21. Sukham atyantikam yat tad buddhi graham atindriyam veti yatra nachevayam sthitash chalati tatvataha. When he feels that supreme bliss which is perceived only by intelligence, that is reason, and which transcends the senses, and wherein established the said yogi never moves from reality. Comment. The bliss which a yogi feels is infinite, and there can't be any bliss greater than this bliss. because it transcends the three attributes and is axiomatic. This bliss has been called imperishable bliss, infinite bliss, and absolute bliss. This bliss has been called infinite because it is superior to the sattvika joy, which is born of the placidity of mind by meditation on God. This infinite bliss is not born, but it is unborn and axiomatic. This supreme bliss transcends the sensual pleasures. It means that it is superior to the rajasika joy, which is derived from the contact of the senses with their objects. So we are dependent to obtain it, while there is no dependence in attaining infinite bliss, because that is beyond the access of the senses as well as the mind, that can be felt by one's own self. This supreme bliss is superior to the tamasika joy, which is derived from sleep, indolence, and carelessness. A man derives joy from sound sleep, but in sound sleep, mind is merged. Joy is also derived from indolence and heedlessness, but at that time, mind is not awake and discrimination is lost. But in infinite bliss, the mind is not merged, nor is the discrimination lost. It is beyond the access of intellect, because intellect is the evaluate of matter, while bliss is the characteristic of the self which is beyond matter. The yogi feels the bliss in his own self, and established there, he does not move from reality. Namely, this bliss continues endlessly, spontaneously. For example, the Muslims imprisoned Shivaji's son, Sambhaji, made him blind and stripped off his skin to force him to embrace their religion. But he did not embrace their religion, and thus he did not go astray, namely, didn't move from his religion. It means that nothing can force a person to move from his beliefs. When nothing can force a person to move from his beliefs, how can anyone force a yogi to deviate from the supreme bliss? Or how can he himself abandon that supreme bliss? He can't. It means that a man never moves from the supreme bliss, because bliss is the characteristic of the self, soul. He moves only when there is the least affinity with the matter. Thus, by affinity for matter, a man may have a downfall even from trance. So long as he has affinity for the matter, his self can't merge in the cosmic self, because matter is always active. Why a yogi does not move from reality is described in the next verse. Verse 22. Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tatha yasmin sthito na dukhena gurunapi vichalyate. And having gained which, he does not reckon any other gain greater than that, and wherein established, he is not shaken even by the heaviest affliction. Comment. When a person expects more happiness in something else than what he is possessed of, there is every possibility of his reverting to it. A man wants to attain the supreme bliss or infinite bliss. He runs after sleep, indolence, and heedlessness, the tamasic joy. But he abandons it because he feels that the joy derived from the contact of the senses with their objects is pleasanter than this one. He abandons it also when he feels that the sattvika joy, which is born by the placidity of mind, by meditation on God, is superior to it. But he abandons it too when he feels the supreme bliss. There is no greater bliss than it. By gaining this, he has nothing else to seek, because there is no gain greater than this. A man may also abandon something if it results in affliction in spite of its gain. A man may abandon an attempt to achieve a goal if he feels that there is some danger. But here Lord Krishna says that a yogi, having been established in the Supreme Self, cannot be shaken even by the heaviest affliction. If he is hanged or the limbs are broken to pieces, or his body is ground to powder between millstones, or his skin is stripped off his body, or his body is put into boiling oil, he is not shaken. Why is he not shaken even by the heaviest affliction? The reason is that a yogi established in the supreme bliss has no body consciousness. So the harm inflicted on the body does not inflict him. He feels pain or affliction only if he identifies himself with matter. But when he, by breaking off his affinity with matter, is established in the supreme bliss of the self, afflictions or sufferings can't have an access to him, and so he is not shaken even by the heaviest affliction. Now, in the next verse, Lord Krishna gives inspiration to gain that supreme bliss. Verse 23. Tam vidya dukha sanyoga viyogam yoga sangyetam sa nischena yokta veyo yogo nirvena chetsa. This disconnection from assumed union with pain should be known by the name of yoga. This yoga of meditation should be practiced with determination and with an undistracted mind. Comment. Our union with pain is the result of accepting our affinity with the world. This affinity is merely assumed, not real. We can be disconnected from this union because it is merely assumed. It is not natural. However strong our assumption may be, and it may be for a long time, we can cut it asunder as it is impermanent. As soon as we are disconnected from this union with pain, that is body and world, we attain yoga. That is, we feel our union with the self, which is constant, eternal, and spontaneous. But we forget this union because of accepting our affinity with the world. By breaking off this affinity, our memory is regained. This yoga of meditation should be practiced by a striver by having the aim of attaining yoga, equanimity, with determination and with an undistracted mind. In order to realize this state of equanimity, a striver should have a determinate intellect that he has to attain this yoga even in the face of all temptations and afflictions. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.